Right now, our local hardware stores and garden centers are loaded with lots of little tomato plants. If you start looking at those plants, you're going to see some terms that show up time and again. Determinate, indeterminate, hybrid, heirloom. What do these terms actually mean, and how can they help you decide the best plants to grow in your garden? That's what we're going to talk about now. Let me start by saying that you don't actually need to know any of this in order to grow tomatoes. If you have a bunch of seeds from a variety of tomato that you like and are happy with and does what you need it to do, you may be perfectly fine not caring about any of this. But if you're trying to decide what tomatoes are going to be best for your garden, then knowing these terms will help make that a lot easier. We're going to start with the two most important. That's determinate and indeterminate. This describes how a plant grows and fruits. Usually we hear this when talking about tomatoes, but it does apply to some other plants as well. We're going to focus just on tomatoes today. Let me give you the simplest definitions I can find for those two. Determinate simply means the plant will grow to a determined size, set out a certain number of fruit, usually all at once, produce that fruit, ripen it, and then stop. Indeterminate is kind of the opposite of that. It will continually grow and start putting out fruit and continually produce more fruit, and it will just keep doing that until something stops it. That something is normally going to be heat or cold. Now what this means is that you can end up with two very different tomato plants based on whether it's determinate or indeterminate. The other two terms that we're going to discuss are heirloom and hybrid. So a variety being labeled as an heirloom simply means that it hasn't been crossbred with another type of tomato, usually for 40 or 50 years, and that its children, the seeds, will produce the same variety of plant. Hybrids, on the other hand, come from crossbreeding different types of tomato varieties. This crossbreeding, usually done to enhance a particular trait of the two parent varieties, means that you have a slightly different plant that has characteristics of both of the parents. There is a side effect to this. Heirlooms will produce the same variety of children from their seeds, whereas hybrids may not. Hybrids are not stable, meaning that the next generation you get from those parent plants may not be exactly the same. They may have more traits from one of the grandparents and more traits from another one. So therefore, it's generally not a good idea to save hybrid seeds for use the next season. You're going to want to buy new seeds or plants every year if you're interested in hybrids. I should note, there's nothing wrong with hybrids. They're not genetically modified, they're not engineered in a lab, they're just crossbreeds. Much like if you crossbreed a German Shepherd with a Dalmatian, you're going to end up with something that's a little bit between a German Shepherd and a Dalmatian and has traits from both of them. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that resulting dog. It's just a different kind of dog. Same with tomatoes. You take two different types and cross them, you're going to get something different that's a little like both of the parents. It's just a different tomato. So if we take all four of those terms and look at them together, we can kind of use those terms to determine what we want and what kind of tomatoes we're going to get. If you want a small controllable tomato for, say, putting in a pot on your patio, then you're probably going to want a determinate tomato because you only want it to get so big. And the result is that you're going to get all of your fruit at once and then the plant will be done. On the other hand, if you have the room for it and you want tomatoes throughout the season, you're probably going to want an indeterminate tomato type. Some reasons that you might want a determinate versus an indeterminate other than size. Determinates will usually put out their fruit all at once. So if you want to do canning, saucing, things like that where you need a lot of tomatoes and you want to do all the work at once, determinate is the way to go. On the other hand, if you want tomatoes throughout the season, so you're going to add a few to different salads or dishes throughout the season, then you're going to want indeterminate. For most gardeners, if you have the room, there's good reasons to have a little of each. Now with hybrid and heirloom, if you want to save seeds so that you can grow more tomatoes from that next year, you have to use heirlooms. You don't want to propagate hybrids And there's no guarantee you're going to get the same thing that you bought the plant for in the first place if you try to save hybrid seeds. However, there are some very good reasons for getting hybrids. On some of the plants behind me, I have a particular disease. I'm not entirely sure what it is yet, but it hits me every year, and I have to fight it for quite some time before I get it under control. If I do find out exactly what that is, I can look for a variety of hybrid that is bred to be resistant to that particular disease. So if you have a particular disease or pest or fungus that you know hits you every year, a hybrid is probably a good way to deal with that. So you can get hybrids that are determinate or indeterminate. You can get heirlooms that are determinate or indeterminate. So you also find words like patio. That generally is defining the size of the plant. A word of caution about that: read the descriptions of the plants carefully. It's not uncommon to find a variety that's described as patio and then to read the description and find out that they recommend you put it in a 3-foot wide pot. Another word that you'll find is bush or vining. Bush is usually determinate. Vining is normally indeterminate because a bush grows to a certain size and stops. Vining indicates that it will keep growing and creating a vine or a network of vines. We personally grow a combination. Many of my tomatoes are indeterminate vining types. Most of them are heirlooms. I do, however, have hybrid determinates. I have a Heatmaster that is resistant to summer heat. It can get a little hotter before it quits. It is also a determinate early so that it can produce its fruit before that heat really settles in. Hopefully this has helped you decide what plants are best for you the next time you're looking at a row of tomato plants or a seed catalog. We'll have a series of videos on tomatoes. The next one is probably going to be about pruning and managing your tomatoes and their growth, and then we'll also have one on disease management. So we hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Before you go, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the Anole Garden and click on that bell icon so that you will get notifications when new videos are out.